So the school is expanding to all the regulated sector as was in the initial plan. Okay. Florence School of Regulation, Communications and Media, we have some institutional partners. Obviously, our major institutional partner is the UI through the Robert Schuman Center. Then we have a partnership with IRG and also with TEPRA. So these are institutional partners. Then the school has a group of market partners in which there are major companies of different nature. This group grows, changes a little bit year by year, but this more or less, this is a group of 2013. Okay. As you see, there are companies very different, like from Google to Alcatel-Lucent to Qualcomm to the major some of the major telcos in Europe. Some of the new entrants, Fastweb, Wind. Okay, you see, it's a differentiated group. How is the structure of the school? Very quickly, the school has an area director that has a team of support, researchers that are here. Then, very important for the activity of the school, we have a scientific committee from people from many European universities and even US universities, scientific committee of professor or expert that help us to do the activities that we'll see in a second. And then we have an advisory council in which sit the representative of the companies that work with us, that give inputs and advice on issues and relevant policy themes in discussion in the industry. What we do policy events, training and research. This kind of seminar like today is somehow in the middle between a policy event and the research, because it's a discussion of some of the issues that we are studying in this period. Just to very quickly, we try to focus on two main events just to know this. We are giving this message. We do many events, but there are two that are becoming permanent appointments that are important for us. The scientific seminar that is held always at the last week of March, that present original scientific and policy research. And this is a very academic seminar, but with a particular blend of the fact that we move toward theory to practice. So there are a lot of papers, academic papers, discussant, very academic discussion, but with this view. And then the next will be 28th, 29th of March 2014. We are going to have the call of paper in a few weeks. And then we have our annual conference that is the last Friday of May each year. And this is our major discussion of policy. We normally try to discuss the state of the industry, which are the major problems for the telecommunication and media industry. And often what we do also is to create also an occasion also for international experience comparison, particularly with the US, but also with other areas when possible or important. And the next will be the 30th of May 2014. Then we have the training. We are a school, and the annual training from October to April is our, if you want, our major activity. I'll have a second slide in a second. Then we have some specialized training. For instance, one was mentioned is this training for judges, that is the entrance program in competition law and economics. And then we do also organize specialized trainings in ad hoc trainings. For instance, we have just reached an agreement, and we will kind of replicate our annual training during the next year in Anacom in Portugal. We'll do it for the Portuguese authority in Lisbon. Okay, just to have a look and a presentation in a second of our training. Our training is in blocks. People come to Florence 4 times, once for a week and then for 3 days. And in the middle there are online tutorials. So it's a yearly training. It's a sort, if you want, kind of a professional master, if you want, but for people that can continue to work. Okay, and it's a very nice training, I think, and it's taught by people from the Commission, regulators, and many of the people from our scientific committee. So that's the major activity that our scientific committee does for the school also, one of the major activities. Okay, we have a sort of parallel project in a sense, because with the help of the Florence School, but with the help of the Commission, and we started at the beginning of 2012 the Center for Media Pluralism and Media Freedom. I direct at the moment both projects. The center, just to present, because this is a seminar by the Florence, but is very close also for the topics to the center, so let's have a couple of words about what the center is. Center does research, working papers and research activity, debates, so there are seminars from the center, and there is occasions of discussion from the center. It does a training, because we have, as you probably know, a school for journalists that we do in late spring. Then there is dissemination of activity, there is a very active web and blog activity, and now there is this media pluralism monitor that we'll discuss a little bit later in some detail. What we have done in terms of research, I don't spend time on this now, but there is, as you know, many of you may know, there is this study we did the last year on the European Union competencies in respect of media pluralism and media freedom. Then we have a working paper series. This, by the way, the study is on the net, so it's easy to read it if you are interested in this theme. There is a working paper series that we have call of papers once in a while, but we are also getting papers and reviewing them and put in our series on this kind of issues. And then now we are just finishing, and we present in the Parliament the 27th of November research on the status of media freedom and pluralism in Western Balkans. Will be given the presentation on the 27th, as I say. So the study is almost some good stage, and this also will become public. Debates, well, this is a list of debates we have done. As I say, also the center has its own debates with media pluralism and diversity and combating hate speech in Europe. We did last year. Last year also we discussed the EU competences, as I say, with a couple of seminars on workshops on definition of pluralism and pluralism competition and market definitions. So there is an activity also of policy debate in the center. Then the summer school, as I mentioned, summer school, the next one, I don't know if we know already the date. May or June? First week of June. Okay, so you'll know that's to be confirmed. Okay, yes, and the summer school is 5 days, and each day has its own special focus. That this year also, the first summer school will be an occasion, we'll mention it later, to check also to somehow discuss the work we are doing on the Media Pluralism Monitor. So the school will do its own normal activity, but we'll also use the fact to have a group of journalists from or media practitioners from many countries to discuss how we are working on the Media Pluralism Monitor. Okay, today I was already a bit too long, but anyway, we will discuss mainly the internet challenge to the traditional notion of pluralism today. As you know, the term media pluralism there was a media environment in which there was a scarcity, especially scarcity in the resources for the broadcasting, frequencies and spectrum scarcity. And that's probably that has been the true moment in which media pluralism was under the idea that was something on which scarcity was the major issue. Nowadays, the situation is different. Traditional scarcity is not the issue probably anymore. We'll discuss it today because the web gives easier access both to generate content and to visit content. So new intermediaries certainly have more opportunity to express themselves. However, this is also a new challenge, and we will discuss today this challenge under, I would say, 4 different headings. Access, so let's see if really access is as open as is contented. Content regulation, market dominance and concentration, and if you want also market definition before this. And then issues, special issues like filtering and gatekeeping that are probably the issues of media pluralism in the age of internet. We have, I think, a great panel of speakers today. We have also participation that is from experts, so this is not a seminar in which the audience is not is here to listen. The audience is here to discuss. So there will be an open discussion, and the way in which we have organized the discussion will be through 3 sessions, as I said: access, regulation, and subjects. And so we will focus on these 3 different issues during the day. We have a very important speaker because we have with us Lorena Alonso, that is head of unit of DG Connect at the Commission, and it's the unit that works on this very issue. I think that these are we are set to start, and I am very happy to give the floor to Lorena Alonso for the opening speech. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And first of all, well, if I was impressed already by the Institute after this explanation, I didn't know you were doing so many things. I feel very tempted to come in the summer for this seminar on journalism, to tell you the truth, or to send someone from my people. But not seriously, I'm very honored to be here. I had the chance to come as a student in one of your summer courses many years ago. I had the chance to come to accompany my commissioner, Vice President Cruz, to come and speak. And I had the chance to have Professor Joseph Weiler as my professors. That was also many years ago. So for me, it's really an honor that now you invite me to speak myself. And I suppose that what you want to listen from me is what the Commission is doing today, right now, in this field of media pluralism. But before getting there, I would like to tell you a little story about how we got there. And there's a fly there. And I apologize already that I need to talk a little bit about me, but it's justified. How this started, as you may know, Vice President Cruz was previously dealing with competition matters. And then when she was asked to stay in the Commission, well, she changed the portfolio, and we got the digital agenda portfolio. And at the beginning of a mandate, I was working for her at the time. I was her deputy head of cabinet. When you change portfolio at the beginning of a mandate of the Commission, what happens is that the services, the DG comes to the Commission and explain to the Commissioner what is the new portfolio and what are the possible actions. And of course, for us, it was all about telecoms, and yeah, there was this audiovisual media services directive. We knew about that, but at one point, the unit I'm heading now came to explain to us there is this file as well. And they explained to us the media pluralism file and the 3-steps approach and the monitoring tool, and then say, so what do you intend to do, Commissioner, with this? And Nelly and I, we look at each other and say, well, why should we do anything? Is there anything to be done? It was a moment that was 4 years ago. The situation was quite quiet, or so we thought. Nobody asking for us, putting pressure, so we didn't really see the need, so we said, listen. And even more, we were just arriving to a new portfolio, and we were very excited with the internet. This was the solution for everything on Earth, including media pluralism. So we started a debate with the services saying, well, you need to convince us that there is something to be done from the Commission side in this field. First of all, because we see or have the impression that with the internet, everything is fixed. And of course, you have a lot of debates, including this today. And at the time, some things had been written already from the academicians. There's much more now. At the moment, we were mainly relying in our own experience, and particularly in my experience. And I saw so many benefits for media pluralism of the internet. First of all, and you all know them, the access to so many sources of information. If I talk about my own experience, in the past I used to read 2 newspapers, El País and Financial Times, for work. I mean, El País because it's the one I like, and Financial Times, I receive it in the office, and for work reasons, it's something I had to read, and that was it. Today, my breakfasts are really incredibly instructive. I still read these 2 newspapers. In addition, I add Le Monde, and in addition, then I go to Flipboard, and there I have access to everything on Earth on the field I'm working for. And then I go to Twitter, and I do it in that order. First, I read the 2-3 newspapers, then I go to Flipboard, where I have access to already a selection of news in the field I'm working, and I go to Twitter. And in Twitter, I discover plenty of things I would have never find out without going there. And that's my morning. I finish my breakfast, and I have had access already to so many sources of information. So that was the first advantage. I said, well, this is fixed. Then, of course, if you already know what you are looking for, well, the search facility is wonderful. And not only because you find it easily, but because it's a wonderful way to check and contrast what you have read already. So I look for this, and then I say, I'm not really convinced. This is a very objective description of what I was looking for. And it's so easily, without moving from my chair, I can contrast this information, and I can challenge. And even more, I can participate, and I can comment. So I can even influence, and this is happening today, you can influence and counterbalance established media vested interests. So we were living in this wonderful world, and then the DG said, well, that's only one side of the story. That's the nice side of the internet. There are other things that are worrying. And still, it was not that easy to convince us, because the first one was, and it has been discussed as well, I'm sure you'll discuss it this afternoon, is the different attitude of users vis-a-vis the media, and the role of personalized filter, the fact that the readers are and remain in their comfort zone because they look for what they want, and they are not confronted to other point of views. Okay, we've read about it. I'm not sure it's very different to what happened before. I was reading El País because that's what I liked. My natural tendency was not to buy, and I know some people do it, but it's not the average reader, to buy 10 newspapers to compare, honestly. Normally, you tend to go to where you feel comfortable. Has this changed? I think it will always depend on the attitude of the reader. Then the argument that there is too much information, that's one I really don't buy. I don't buy that one. There's never too much information. So if there are things we should be, I'm not going to use the word worried, but at least watching out and monitoring and carefully looking at is indeed what you have mentioned, is if there is too much concentration of power, if this implies access issues, and even worse, if these players start to exercise editorial choices. Then indeed you may start to worry. Are we there? From my point of view, not yet. Is this a situation that is very different to what has happened in the past? Well, maybe we have had this type of situations in different ways. Well, I was going to say I remember, but I don't remember because I was not yet born in 1938, when Orson Welles had this radio program about the alien invasion. And in 1938, that already happened. The power of a media, the power of someone convincing the whole world that the Martians had arrived on Earth. And this triggered a huge debate already at the time about the need to regulate because of the risk of abuse. So these things were happening already in 1938. So it's just that now these type of problems come in a different way. But I'm not minimizing them. I'm saying that we should not panic. That's my point of view. In any case, we of course didn't fix the issue, and I'm not sure this will be ever fixed. We will have wonderful debates about the influence of the internet in media pluralism. But what the services told us, and this is my unit, they were very smart already. They told us that in any case, Commissioner, you know what? Whatever you decide now, don't worry. Things are quiet. But at one point in time, when you don't expect it, somewhere in Europe, something will happen. And it will explode, and you will feel under a huge pressure to do something. We said, it didn't really look like that this would happen. But of course, they were right. They are very smart. They are my people. They work for me. But they didn't yet. They were already very smart. And this happened. And the situation exploded in Hungary, as you may remember. That was the trigger. That was the trigger of all our actions. A government that tried to pass a media law that was very problematic. Very problematic. And then indeed, we were asked by the whole world to do something. We were asked by the parliament, we were asked by journalists, we were even asked by member states, which today looks interesting, but at the time we had some governments writing to us and said, Commission, do something. So what happened is that on the spot, we had to find what were our competences in this field to do something. And we found certain competences, and it was a very, very interesting and very instructive for me situation. Because, of course, there was no judgment, there was no decision of the Commission. This all happened via negotiations with the government of Hungary. But in order to negotiate, you need to know that you have a legal basis, so that if the negotiation doesn't work, you can challenge and bring them to court. So we had to look for our legal basis, and what did we find? Of course, we found our wonderful Audiovisual Media Services Directive, but I have to tell you that that was not the only thing. We were basing ourselves also on the treaty and on the charter. And in particular, as regards two of the problems that we found, one was the obligation they had imposed on all media to have a balanced coverage, which is something which in the broadcast atmosphere is quite traditional, but when you start to impose balanced coverage in blogs or in VOD services, then it becomes a little bit more problematic. The other one where we made in our negotiations and in our own reasoning links to the treaty, and when I say the treaty is Articles 49 and 56, together with Article 11 of the Charter, it's in the registration requirements. because one of the proposals of the Hungarians was to impose a registration requirement for all media, including websites. So we managed, using our existing legal basis, to make the Hungarians change their law. Did we get everything we would have want to get? No. No, because we went and we exploited the limits of our competences. Then the Council of Europe took the floor, and they managed to make the Hungarian government change certain things of the law. Are they already happy? I'm not sure. I'm not sure they are happy with everything. What I know is that we went to the limits of what we could do, and that then, of course, there was disappointment. There was disappointment because there were certain things we couldn't change. And then we had the parliament, and then we had the citizens saying, well, do more. What are you going to do about the independence of the regulator? And we had to say, sorry, no competence. We can do nothing. And then something happened that I must say I feel even a bit sad about. Then a big debate about competences started. A big debate which was first, in part, an academic debate because it's a legal matter, but it's a political debate. And then it's about whether the Commission should have more power or not, and then, of course, comes the matter of subsidiarity. And at one point, we were discussing all these things, and nobody was discussing anymore about the problems of media pluralism in Europe. That it became a debate about competences. It became a debate about power. And that's what I find very sad, that in the meantime, people in Hungary, in Romania, in Bulgaria were having problems, and we were receiving constant complaints from citizens, from journalists. And this is where Vice President Kroes said, listen, let's do something. Let's stop this debate. And from my point of view, before starting the debate about competences, there are 3 steps that you have to follow. The first one is to acknowledge that there is a problem, and that this has to be acknowledged at European level, that there are member states where things are wonderful or they think they are wonderful, but I think it's the responsibility of all member states that belong to the European Union to worry about the situation in other member states as well, and to say clearly, okay, there is a problem. Then the second step is to, depending on the type of problem, to identify what is the best tool to deal with that problem. Because everybody's scared about legislation or about infringement cases, but maybe you don't need for every type of situation to legislate. And in this particular field, it's true, mainly when we talk about the press, that the word regulation is often associated with a lack of media pluralism. So it's a very difficult debate, where we should avoid saying doing something means legislating. Doing something means doing what has to be done. So once you have acknowledged there is a problem, you have identified for each type of problem what is the instrument, there is still a third step to be followed, which is at what level do we need to act? Because maybe even having competences, there is no need for the European Union to act. Maybe it's for the government, and maybe it's even for the industry themselves to do something. So the level is also very important. For me, it's only the last step. Once you have gone through all of that, that you say, okay, there's this type of problem to be tackled with this type of instrument at this level, and then let's find out, do we have competence? Is this level having the competence to do such a thing? So with this in our minds is when Vice President Kroes decided to ask a high-level group for a report about whether it was appropriate or not for the Commission to do more than what we were doing, and whether we had competences for that. In parallel, as Pierluigi was explaining, we asked for a more academic report to the Institute on competences. We got both, And as regards the high-level group report, it's interesting because they came with 30 recommendations, and they were not all to the Commission. They had done what we had had in mind, which is, well, there are some recommendations to the Commission, but there are some recommendations also to governments, and there are recommendations for media companies, and there are even recommendations for journalists on things to be done. And as regards, of course, the main recommendation about competences, what they said is very interesting because they didn't say that we need to change the treaty. The high-level group report says there's no need to change anything. You have competences. It's just that you should use them more, and you should use them better. That's what they told us. You have the freedom articles of the treaty, you have the citizenship articles, participation to European elections. So we had some advices there about the use of our competences. So we published this report, and then something very interesting happened. Something, I must say, I was not expecting. We published it, and the day after, we had some welcomings. We had even some disappointments. Oh, we were expecting more asking the Commission to do things. But we had a very important part of the press whose headlines was, the Commission wants to regulate the press. That was the headline. And we were shocked, because I couldn't even remember any part of the report saying such a thing. I had participated to some of the discussions of the high-level group report members. We were simply a secretariat. They were completely independent. And I didn't have the feeling this had been discussed. So we had to go back to the report and say, wait, where on earth can we say that the Commission has to regulate the press? And we found that was indeed a recommendation that said, it said member states, no, not even. It says there should be media councils, so self-regulatory bodies of the press in all member states. So up to their completely self-regulation. So there should be there, and they should have powers, and well, they should be very pleased. But there was this last sentence in the end saying, and all media councils in Europe should follow European set standards that should be monitored by the European Commission. And that was the sin of the report, to have said such a thing. This was interpreted by the press, or by a part of the press, as the Commission was to regulate. I keep on telling them every time I have a speech or a meeting with them that this was never the intention, it's not the intention, but well. So the reactions, of course, this was published at the time of the Levinson inquiry. So in particular, the UK press was quite sensitive, but it was not only the UK. And what happened is that given the reactions we had, the Commissioner decided to publish the report and make a public consultation about it. To say, and now let's see what people think about this report. And we took advantage that there was one of the recommendations that was very important for us, because it's one where we feel we have competence to do something, which is the one on ensuring the independence of the regulators, of the audiovisual regulators. As you know, right now, and despite the fact that in other fields like telecoms, there is in the EU legislation a requirement to member states to have independent regulators. We have that in telecom, we have that in data protection. We don't have that in audiovisual, which is quite interesting, given the subject. So this implies a change of an article of the directive, it's Article 30. And we carried a separate consultation on that. It's on the need to change this directive in that sense, and also the possibility of formalizing the group of regulators. So we carried this to public consultation, and the results were a lot of participation. As regards the results of the public consultation on the independence of regulators, overwhelming majority that this is a good idea, that this is necessary, that this will help not only media pluralism, but above all, it will help the implementation of the directive and also on the formalization of regulators. As regards the public consultation on the high-level group, there were 30 recommendations, so I'm not going to go one by one. The results are very different depending on the recommendation. I can tell you that the ones that got more backing were, in general, all those relating to funding activities, so that we should fund investigative journalism or media literacy in these fields. A lot of backing on those related to external relations, that we should really, in our negotiation with third countries and with accession countries, impose media pluralism standards. On the one related to search engines, was also quite heavily backed. As regards the first one, the one on competences, that said, you have the competences, just use them more. You could use them more. We had a majority of support, but when you look at who said what, it's very interesting, because citizens, NGOs, and journalists, big majority backing. Governments and media companies, not happy at all. That we should do more. So that reflects probably the reality of what people think about we doing more or not. So now, of course, you would like to know what next. What are we going to do? Well, we are still assessing the reports. Vice President Cruz has said publicly that there are two fields that for her merit particular attention. One is the one on independence of regulators and for formalization of the group, and the other one is on transparency of media ownership. These are the two fields that she has highlighted as deserving particular attention. Does it mean we are going to do something about them? Not necessarily. This is something we are checking. We are in a particular delicate moment because it's the end of the Commission mandate, it's the end of the Parliament, and even pretending to do something legislative is not realistic. It's at this late moment in a mandate, normally you don't come with legislative proposal, well, or if you come, they will not succeed. So probably it's wise to think that anything legislative, if it has to happen, it would be for the next mandate. As regards the independence of the regulator, this is a matter then that will be examined together with the whole review of the AVMSD directive that will take place in the next mandate. As you know, we have published a green paper on convergence, and this paper has as objective to assess the need or not to change the directive in view of the convergence of the media. So within this context, we will also assess the need to change Article 30. Could there be things that are not legislative that could be done in the field of regulators? Maybe. Maybe. And this is what we are now assessing and discussing with the regulators. Maya knows it very well. We have a meeting in 2 weeks with them. There might be things we can do. There might be things we can do that are not legislative and that are in the short term. As regards the other field, transparency of media ownership rules, the same. Is there anything we could still do that is not legislative? This is to be seen. This is being discussed, and we'll analyze. So I think I'm going to stop here. If there is any message I would like to pass, is the one I said before. That from our point of view, what is very important, and I must say I thank very much the Lithuanian presidency, because they have called for a ministerial meeting about media pluralism. And a first informal exchange took place in Vilnius some weeks ago. I was there with Vice President Cruz. And only the fact that member states, that governments are discussing it and acknowledging there is an issue, for me is a very good first step. And that's what I would plead, that we can have a lot of debates about competences, but let's not forget that the first thing is to acknowledge acknowledge there's a problem. And this is why, and I will end up with this monitoring tool is a very important part of the analysis. Let's see how the situation looks like in member states, and then see what's to be done. So the contribution of this is going to be very important to prepare any possible program for the next mandate. So, like that, I pass the, the floor to the next subject. Well, unless you, of course, want to ask me whatever question, I'm very happy to answer.
If there is an intervention, well, we have the whole day, and Lorena is with us the whole day. So, yeah, Raquel.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you for the clarification. Can I just ask, I suppose, one question and just then raise a suggestion just to see what you think. In terms of the question, you discussed the Commission's engagement with the Hungarian media reforms, excuse me, and indicated that your approach there was limited to areas that fell within the internal market services field of EU competence. Do you think there's any scope to develop that further, and it might then later on enhance your engagement with the Media Pluralism Monitor to base your intervention on more directly Article 11 in the Charter and the protection of media pluralism, linking it up with, I think, that Article 2 of the TEU, and then the powers to ensure that member states themselves comply with the fundamental values, so that your intervention really is to ensure not compliance with internal market rules, but fundamental freedoms. And my second question is just a question for just to see your interest. I mean, what scope is there in this context for the open method of coordination? I mean, obviously the regulators are very much engaged in implementing media controls, but is there any scope in this field as part of a sort of group of different initiatives that you might take in the Media Pluralism Monitor and monitoring for fundamental freedoms fit together quite well, but is there also provision for the open method of coordination? Because at the end of the day, you know, if you are regulating for media pluralism, you have to decide at least what the basic thresholds or the basic standards are that you're going to enforce. You can't, in a sense, avoid, at the end of the day, if you're regulating, deciding, you know, where the buck stops and where a member state has fallen possibly below the standard. So is there any possibility for developments through that technique?
Okay, on the first question, I don't think that the competences of the commissions are limited to internal market. As you know, according to the charter and to the jurisprudence of the court, we can implement the charter, I mean we should implement the charter when implementing European Union law, same for member states. So the institutions and the member states are subject to the charter when implementing EU law, whatever EU law, not only internal market rules. This is up to now the easiest way, because whenever there's a cross-border activity, you can use the fundamental freedoms. But of course, there are other articles in the treaty, and citizenship articles, for example, you could use them. Even, and this is something that recently, because you know that it's a pity, it's always Hungary. I apologize if there's some Hungarian in the room, but you know that after the media law, there were also some changes to the constitution that are problematic as well, and that were dealing with, among other things, advertising rules for electoral campaigns. And as you may know, in that case it was Vice President Reding and Barroso himself started a negotiation with the Hungarian authorities to have this change, because this could affect the elections to the European Parliament. Which means, and as I told you before, the Commission normally doesn't start negotiations if you don't know you have a legal basis. So again, we don't have a decision, and there will not be a judgment, but Vice President Reding was negotiating with the Hungarians on that basis. So without a need to have a legal paper in front of me, I can perfectly imagine that that's what they had in mind, a combination of the Charter with rules on elections to the European Parliament. So it's not only internal market rules. What we do always need is a link with EU rules, whatever they are, whether they are primary law in the treaty, whether they are a secondary law. Of course, if what you have in mind is legislation, certain articles of the treaty require unanimity, others not. So that's something you always have in mind. On your second question, honestly, I'm not even sure I understand it correctly. I never thought of that, given the sensitivity of the subject and the political climate right now on subsidiarity. I see this tricky, honestly. Something different is whatever, informally, something more could be done altogether. And that's a little bit the plea of Vice President Cruz now when she talks to the Council and to the Parliament. I mean, let's stop fighting and do each of us what we are supposed to do at our level and work more together. Not sure it satisfies you, but that's what it is. Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation. Actually, I wanted to make a comment on the issue of competences, because mentioning the Hungarian case, you said that the Commission did whatever fell within its area of competence. But being a bit critical here, because I think this is what we are supposed to do today, I think that there was some competence, and I think that there were further things for the Commission to do in that case. I'm referring to Article 7, for example, of the Treaty on the European Union, which allows the Commission to take some action when fundamental human rights are infringed, which was the case here. Or, for example, here, the Audiovisual Media Services Directive, because if I'm not mistaken, the Hungarian media law sought to transpose the Audiovisual Media Services Directive within the domestic sphere. That was the case about. So I think that we could easily draw a link between the Audiovisual Media Services Directive and Article 11, paragraph 2 of the Charter of Fundamental Rights of the European Union. So I think, and easily the case could be brought to the court. So I think that we didn't precisely exceed competences there. Thank you.
In fact, that's what we did. We used the AVMSD directive, and I can tell you, I'm not sure if you are filming me that I should say this, but I can assure you we stretched it to the limits, honestly. We were interpreting certain articles really in a very broad way. So we did that. I have in front of me the analysis we did, and we did it together with the legal service to see how far we could go. So honestly, but there's some limits. There were some of these media law provisions that related to the printed press. AVMSD had nothing to do there. There were some of the issues that related to the independence of the regulator. And unfortunately, Article 30 doesn't require member states to have an independent regulator. So even if it was feeling very close to AVMSD, we couldn't enact it. So we did that. We applied some provisions, in particular Article 3 as well, of the directive together with Article 11. But honestly, because I was living it in first person. I was negotiating with the Hungarians and with the legal service. I feel absolutely very comfortable. I'm absolutely sure we did as much as we could. Honestly, I have no doubt. There might be other situations where politically you could think Commission could have done more, but didn't there. In this case, I can tell you we exploited everything. On your other question, Article 7. Well, you know, this is the nuclear bomb option. That's the way we call it. It's a very delicate. This is really a very delicate political choice, because if you start to, this is something also that I discovered when looking at the Hungarian, and not only the Hungarian case. Now that I'm checking the application of the of the directive, you have sometimes very similar articles in the implementation field in different countries that are applied in a completely different way. And law is not the only thing, unfortunately. Because if we could change an article and be sure that media pluralism would be fixed, that would be great. But I realize that there are certain countries that are really hidden. I mean, that our situation of media pluralism is exemplary. Sometimes you find certain articles and say, oops, my God, what is this? And you don't know if you should do anything about it because there is nothing but happening. So the culture and the maturity of the democracy of a country plays maybe a higher role sometimes than legislation. And that's the difficulty. Because if you open an Article 7 case on the basis of 3 articles of a law, you may have surprises that maybe you find a wonderful country that has similar articles, and then very rightly the Hungarians could tell you, well, I'm sorry, what about my neighbors? So this is why I think Article 7 is to be kept for very, very exceptional circumstances. And I mean, the Commission has not considered that they have arrived yet.
We move, and anyway, the discussion will continue during the day. We move to the second thing of this that we were planning to do, that is to present this the situation of the media pluralism monitor pilot test implementation 2013-2014. Okay, this presentation will go this way. I will speak maybe a couple of minutes on the first few slides. Then Giovanni Biancini will talk about the monitor, the way we are examining it, and then Andrea Calderaro will focus on the internet part of the monitor that is, and I will explain in a second why the internet part is a major issue in the work we need to do. Then we want to do this presentation today because you know that here there are several experts of the question that we are beginning to work on. And we are doing it now so that we'll have the whole day to have together suggestions and ideas during the day. So it's, if you want, it's part of the seminar in this sense. We are using the occasion to tell you about this work that is really at the beginning. We had the kickoff meeting a few weeks ago, and we are in the real first phase of the work. Let me, okay, so let me say just a few words. The monitor is one of the results, in a sense, of the 2007 three-step approach, because in 2007 there was this approach by Commissioner Reding and Vice President Wallström to reinforce media pluralism, and the so-called three-step approach had this commission staff working paper on media pluralism, then the idea of the independent study of pluralism in EU member states, and that would lead to a communication of the Commission on the status of pluralism in Europe. The first step was never achieved, while the second, the independent study, was done by a group of universities, 11 John Coping University, International Business School, and Central European University, and Ernst Young. And the group came up with a major study. We have one of the leader of the group here, because Peggy Valke is here, and so we'll have the occasion also to discuss later. Then, okay, so the study, let's say, remained there from 2009. There were some small experiments, but actually the commission, there was a change in commission, there was really a direct follow-up, let's say. And now we are in the phase of somehow of this follow-up. Then there was this discussion of the competencies that Lorena has very well explained to us a few minutes ago. And then with the question of the competencies, again, the question of the monitoring was raised again. If there is a risk, who should intervene, but who is first, before that, who is going to, how we assess this risk? So you see the 2009 effort came back in a forefront in a sense, because the discussion was how we assess the risk. So in 2012 we did, as I said, the policy report on EU competencies, and then the Commission decided to go back on the monitoring issue, and we were given this project to do three things. And now I'll left the floor to the colleagues to explain the situation of the monitor and the internet part. But let me say that in the end, we have been given at least we perceive this as the duty to do three things. The first is to examine again the monitoring after a few years have passed. So let's have a second look at the instrument and try to see if this instrument can be helped to. Was a very major effort. After a few years, let's have a second look at it and see if we can render it as operational as possible. That, I would say, is the first goal of this effort. The second goal is these years are very important in the pluralism area also, because of obviously internet was there in 2009, but certainly we now have the full impact of the dimension of how internet affects the media landscape. And so the second question is how we make sure and maybe change things to make sure that internet is fully taken into account in this instrument that we are going to use, the internet impact. And third, let's give it a try, experiment. So let's use it. Obviously, we cannot, this is an experimental use, so we cannot use it in all the 28 European countries. The decision was, after some discussion with the Commission, is to let's experiment it in 9 countries that can be widely representative. So we'll discuss some of the criteria we are using to come to the choice of the 9 countries to do the experiment. So if I can summarize, yeah, it's a difficult word. Let's make it more operational, that maybe simplify a little bit here and there, or any way to streamline somehow the application, make sure that the internet is inside, and then experiment in 9 countries. That's what we are planning to do from here to August of next year. We have just started, and I think the first part is to really understand the instrument. And so let's have some explanation of where we are. Okay, Giovanni starts.
Thank you, Pierluigi. And yes, before talking about the work that we are going to do in the next months, I think that it's useful to have some just very brief takeaway spots from what the monitor was and what the monitor is. First of all, as Peggy always reminds correctly, we have to stress that the monitor itself is not a therapy. It is a diagnosis. It doesn't prescribe any precise recommendation, but just is a tool that intends to measure and to measure the risk about media pluralism. It's a neutral, analytic, comprehensive, objective, evolved, and is also very user-friendly tool. And it is based on three on scores realized on the basis of three border values, measured with three different colors: the red light when there is no need for action, when there is a need for action; the orange light when there is a medium risk and then an attention point; and then a green light when there is no need for action. The study features 166 indicators measuring 43 different types of risks that are grouped in 6 risk domains: the basic domain, and the pluralism and media ownership and control, pluralism and media types and media types and genres, political pluralism, cultural pluralism, and geographical pluralism, that are divided into 3 different types: the legal, that are the majority, almost half, the economic, and the social demographic. So it's very wide and it's very comprehensive. And also the indicators are divided according to 3 different areas that are relying on the traditional value chain: the supply, the distribution, and the use. And maybe probably Andrea will come back on this, also talking about internet, and if internet can eventually even add an additional perspective to this value chain because of its own interactivity characteristics that are different from other media, of course. The 6 risks domain very quickly, because this allows us to understand the richness of the work that has been done. With the basic domain, it was more focusing on the legal framework and on the safeguards that are related to media pluralism. So it's a particular domain, a special domain in a sense. The pluralism of media ownership and control, that deals with the concentration both in audience and resources, concentration of media markets, and also cross-media concentration, the vertical integration, the media transparency, that the ownership transparency that, as Lorena Boalonso told us, is one of the topics that is more relevant for the European Commission. Pluralism of media types, the dealing with the audience parity, the public interest channels, public access to content, for example, the list of events, the resources to support both media diversity and public service media. Then the cultural pluralism, the representation of cultures, both national, European, social groups, minorities, communities. The political pluralism, dealing with the political bias in media, especially during electoral campaigns, but also with editorial independence, the independence of public service media, which is another very important issue, actually. The citizen activity in online media, that is an aspect that, again, Andrea will talk about in his presentation. Then geographical pluralism, about whether there is a centralization of national media system, or a lack, for example, of local on the regional media, or a lack of a representation of local and regional communities. If there is a lack of sources for covering local issues, for example, or if there are problems in accessing to media and distribution systems. and the results were represented in this way with the rows. This is the ownership rows featuring 10 risks and 28 indicators. In this case, for example, which is not, if I remember well, tell me, Peggy, if I'm wrong, but this is not a. It's just an example. It doesn't. It's not related with any particular implementation. So in this case, we have 2 red lights and some few oranges, and this will be the way the results will be displayed. Well, about our implementation, the pilot test implementation was asked by the European Commission to the Center for Media Pluralism and Freedom in 2013, and it's a very special and important occasion to have a first real implementation besides the implementation that was conducted by Agicom. That was the only subject, as Maya Capello told us during the kickoff meeting, was the only attempt to implement the monitor so far, but it was in one country. It was in 2009, and we will try to have a wider implementation in 9 countries. It will be done during the next months until July 2014, and the results will be, of course, discussed with the European Commission and then discussed publicly. And the aim is to have a full implementation in all the 28 countries, not just to use the 9 countries just for the pilot test of the monitor, and to have then a full implementation, and possibly to have to make the NPM as a permanent tool. There are 2 main goals that were already mentioned by Professor Parku. The one is the simplification. We would like to see whether it's possible through our implementation, whether it's possible to simplify somehow the monitor. One way could be, for example, is just an example, but to narrow a bit the focus that could be narrowed on information and on news. And this is something that could be checked by the implementation. And the second one is the update that deals particularly with internet. Internet was, of course, already there in 2009, but probably it evolved and its importance increased so much that it's possible probably to consider other aspects of the internet, particularly with thinking about the social media or some developments about the mobile and portable devices. As said, we are selecting 9 countries. This selection is still in discussion with the European Commission, but anyway, we've done a proposal based on some objective criteria related dealing with population, economical condition, geopolitical position, and the level of attention of the European institution. We will, as Professor Parker was telling before, run, and we are in a phase of the operationalization of the tool, and we will run a field work relying on the expertise of local institutions in each of the 9 countries that we will where we will pilot test implement the monitor. This will be very important, because it will be this choice and the field work, because we would like to avoid to have to insist in the independence and the impartiality of these of the institutions that will help us on this work, and this is fundamental to avoid the interferences and to have the maximum level of objectivity and reliability. We will anyway train and brief the experts through a workshop that will be organized in some months at the beginning of the next year. And then last thing about sources. This is an important, very important aspect. We will have the highest accuracy in selecting and gathering the data. We will rely on the databases provided by the national regulators in each country, possibly also asking EPRA to have if possible, a role in coordinating this data gathering through the national regulators. We will use, of course, the information and database of the European Commission, the Eurostat database. We will also use other sources, such as the European Audiovisual Observatory, that could be used to double-check, to compare the information with other sources that we will use. So I will leave the floor to Andrea. Let me just say that we are aware that it will be a very tough challenge, but we are very happy to be involved in this challenge, and we consider really. I won't be. Don't want to be too much. To put too much emphasis, but it's an historical moment in this field, and we're really thrilled about it. Thank you.
Great, thank you, John.
Yes, I will change the slide.
Okay, talking about challenges, exactly. One of the well, let's say not as a challenge. It's one of the aim actually that we have by want to reach by implementing the monitor is to integrate, to identify some internet indicators that can tell us a bit more about the pluralistic dimension of the internet across EU member states. Some of in the media monitor as it stands now already includes some internet indicators, but in the next few minutes I'm going to discuss these indicators. I'm going to look at the pluralistic dimension of the internet from different perspectives, and I hope that this is the right context to get also feedbacks from the floor, and in order to how exactly to reach our goal. So let's start by discussing a couple of the indicators that are already included in the media pluralism monitor as it stands now. There are again a few. I just picked a couple of them. One is belongs to the risk domain concerning ownership. This indicator aims to describe the ownership concentration in internet content provision, and this is going to be scored looking at the market shares per owner of total market of internet content provision, checking the readership concentration in internet content provision, regulatory safeguards against high concentration of ownership and or control in internet content provision. The methodology that's supposed to be used to score these values are analysis of laws and regulations that are implementation. All right, here we are. Sorry? No, these are, yeah. Okay, it's to give an idea, of course. Yeah. This, is it right? No, I mean, on a different level, I mean, it is another indicator that belongs to the risk domain, referring to the representation of cultural diversities. And in this case, it's the indicator is not exactly concerning the internet, but concerning how cultural, the variety of cultural dimensions in each country is represented in media. And here is also the internet is checked because how these cultural diversities is represented on online contents. The methodology here is indeed checking the content analysis, running content analysis, or relying on scores or evaluations run by a panel of experts. So these again are two examples which are useful to give an idea about how the internet indicators, the kind of information that we can get from the internet indicators that are already included in the media pluralism monitor as it stands now. These are certainly very useful, but the idea is that all these indicators have in common the fact that they consider the internet as an extension of, correct me if I'm wrong here, but it's like an extension of a traditional media. So if we, can you press the, there is a play. Well, it's a, but it's okay. But if we are, yeah, it's beautiful. Okay, then I have to play. Make it even more beautiful. So, but we are here exactly looking at the, discussing the pluralistic dimension of the internet. If there are so much research running on internet freedoms, is because we all believe that internet is something more than a traditional media, because embed some interactivity, and also is a media that is made up by the same users, by giving a great capability to users to create contents and to merge their contents to contents produced by traditional media. If we agree on this, then I think that honest strategy to measure the pluralistic dimension of the internet should take in consideration also other levels. One is, well, this is the standard actually, checking the unequal distribution of internet users, the equal dimension of internet access across EU member states, but also then checking the unequal production of user-generated contents, whether all people are producing contents according to diversity, the pluralistic dimension of their own context. And finally, never forget that not everybody are in the same conditions to produce contents, because they are producing contents in different contexts, which in some cases are can be challenging or challenged by the political context in which they live. And here I refer to the online freedoms. So if we consider, if we all agree that this can be the three new perspectives at looking at the pluralistic dimension of the internet, then I just give here a few examples referring to each of these dimensions. So this is the classic analysis that about the unequal distribution of internet users across EU member states. This is a logistic regression that I ran, let's say, 1.5 years ago. I suppose the data are slightly changed, but I suppose that trends are not changed at all. So, and it is a logistic regression of internet access on social democratic factors, telling us that the internet across European countries is still unequally accessed according to the diversity of social democratic factors. All the indicators are significant. I'm not going through the details of the table, but I think it's more interesting here to this area here, which is the geographic area, which is connected to the tripartition of the Allen Mancini, or of the regions across Europe. And it tells us that the reference point is the internet access in Western European countries, and it tells us that the Scandinavian area, people living in the Scandinavian area are it's almost 1% impact on the internet access in a positive way. While living in the East region, East European countries are rather a minus 0.5%. This, of course, can be something that we may expect, but I mean, we run monitors and we run regression exactly to have the real dimension of the phenomenon. But here again, this tells us information about the unequal distribution of internet access and why this happens. If we want rather to look at, as I was saying before, the unequal production of contents online, and whether the internet in Europe is representative of the pluralist multinationality of Europe, this slide is very interesting. These data are collected by Zuckengram and refers to the user-generated contents indexed by Google, and I think it's pretty representative to the size is the amount of contents produced by each country, and the color is the standardized value, meaning the amount of contents that are per capita, produced by per capita by each person connected to the internet in Germany or in United Kingdom. here again are just examples, and I'm not saying that we are going to measure this, but it's just to give a perspective about how things can be measured looking at other dimensions. Then there is, no? So again, so of course we have to always refer to the fact that I was saying before that not everybody produce information within the same political context or legal framework. This is talking about legal framework. There are a lot of lawyers here that are definitely better than I am to explain this variety of regulations across European countries, EU member states countries. And the Google Transparency Report is very interesting. It gives us information about the amount of requests that they receive from governments to take information down from the internet. This is very interesting. It might be already pretty surprising that we discovering that Germany is the country that has a major amount of requests to Google. And this is the standardized value that tells us the amount of requests according to the amount of information produced by the country. So this makes a bit of more sense. Yeah. No, definitely. With this, I'm not saying that Germany is not a freedom of expression country, but definitely that's why I was saying it depends on the regulations. I mean, in Germany, we know that they're very picky with the copyright issue. This request comes from governments, so they usually don't deal with copyright issues because copyright issues comes from private companies. This data refers on governmental requests, but still, yeah, definitely. Okay, back to the PowerPoint. Okay. So, looking at another level of the freedom of the internet and looking at the different level of how people are in the conditions to be free in accessing and in producing content on the internet, we should look also at the infrastructure of the internet as such. This is very important because there are countries that are definitely, the infrastructure is owned by a few actors, meaning that they have more power in exercise their control over this flow of information. This is the map of the internet exchange nodes in Europe, which is very interesting and very important because more number of internet exchange nodes are owned by the country, and less risky is for that country that the internet will be shut down. As a result of this, there is this very interesting study run by Renaissance, which is one of the leading worldwide company monitoring the internet traffic. And according to the amount of internet exchange points, they can tell us, so they run this interesting report worldwide, referring to the worldwide dimension of this risk of internet disconnection, how exposed is each country to this risk. So this report is very important, it's very useful when we look at the internet from a worldwide dimension, but it might be surprising also to zoom from the map that they provide on the European case to discover that even in Europe, actually, there are countries that are under threats. But not under threats in the sense that really we can consider that, that somebody is really going to shut down the internet, but definitely the internet is more exposed to this risk. For example, in the Balkan area, it's a typical case is the Kosovo, for example. Kosovo is the broadband and the internet infrastructure, the governance on the internet is entirely in the hands of Serbia. This, as we know, the conflict between Serbia and Kosovo. So just to say that if Serbia decides to shut down the internet in Kosovo, absolutely easy to do for them because they own the internet exchange points, they own the broadband. In similar case is the Baltic area there on the west, or in Portugal for geographical reason. So this is just to conclude. I wanted to give you a broad overview about what exactly means measuring internet freedoms and then internet pluralism. We have pluralism, we have internet freedoms. So looking at the pluralistic dimension of the internet from a top-down perspective, some indicators are already included in the monitor. We may need to update it, but they're already there. But we want to look at the internet pluralism as in terms of pluralistic production of user-generated contents. We have to integrate some other of the indicators that I'm more happy to discuss with you. Maybe some of you have better ideas than the one I proposed here. Or otherwise, looking at another level is the pluralistic dimension of the governance of the internet infrastructure. Looking at the ISP, who owns the ISP concentration, the amount of number of exchange points, and the number of secure servers. This actually can be very challenging, but it's almost easier to get this information because I have data available and accessible. So it's just about filling the data set. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you. I think we got a feeling of clearly this is really, we are at the start of the work, both in the general examination of the instruments in this internet specialized focus that we have to add, and it's clear that there is a dimension that is new and is evolving that we have to take into account. I think that what we wanted really to achieve today was on this was to have you the feeling of what are the issues we are facing now. Okay, so we have this very elaborated and wide instrument, and we have to look at it deeply to see if we can use it in a more operational way, as I say, to simplify some elements, to concentrate on what we really think is most important, or to see how to use the maintaining the holistic view of the instrument. And then we have this internet issue, and then as a third step, we have this implementation activity trying countries. So on these three dimensions, I think on the first two dimensions, simplification and integration of the internet, we may have an intermediate step in which we will have some open discussion around the beginning of the year, probably around February, more or less when we are planning to see the network of the people that have to do the field study in the country. So that will be a right moment to have a confrontation with them, but also with all the experts that are interested in this. So this is why we wanted to show it today, the lines on which we are working, and to give the occasion to think about and come back to us. And then we'll have an occasion for organized discussion, okay? And then the second part of the work will be the application, and even there we are open for ideas, suggestions. We'll have to, in these 9 countries that we will announce in the next weeks, then we'll have to find the right people, the right institutions, and the double checks that are needed. So also there you can help us in a way with suggestion and ideas. So this is the point in which we stand, and is a starting point, but we are open for suggestion and help from everybody, and we'll keep you and informed about the work evolves. Okay, I think it's a good moment to stop for a coffee break, and then we'll go to the first section. Okay, thank you.
3,000 questions for you now. I got very interested, suddenly.